Tonight's true scary story really freaked me out for some reason, and it has like this crazy plot twist at the end. I have to read these scary stories every single day, you guys. It is terrifying. Before I get started, I just want to remind you to subscribe to my where I tell longer versions of stories and scarier stories, and the link is in my link tree in my bio. Also, if you want to send me your true scary story, my email is in my bio. Okay, let's get started. This person starts off the story by saying that they know that this sounds fantastical and wild, but it is very true, and it takes place in the back country of West Virginia, which people know is old and haunted. We're gonna call this person Hugh, and the craziest thing about the story is that it wasn't just witnessed by one person, it was witnessed by 4 people, and all 4 people had unfortunate circumstances happen to them after this event, and they believe that it was directly due to this event. When Hugh was 17 years old, he had a bad experience camping with his friends near haunted train tunnels. This particular place was also a site of sudden tragic deaths. Here's a little history of some of the sudden tragic deaths nearby this site. So the first one is of a mother and son drowning in a creek nearby. Then there was a shootout with police officers and drug dealers, where the drug dealer was unalived. Also, many years before, cheap laborers had been unalived, building a double train tunnel. They were also buried in a long-forgotten little graveyard nearby the tunnels, and that has since been found and restored, thankfully. Hugh and 4 of his friends decided that they were going to go camping near this area for their last little get-together before they went off after graduation. This was a private property on the backside of a big hill which the creek flows. It flows in a huge several-mile-long bend. Now, they set up camp and they have a fire going, and shortly after nightfall, him and his cousin sat on a creek bank maybe 20 yards away from the camp. They were spotlight fishing in the water, and then they began to hear like this rhythmic slosh in the water. It sounded like somebody was wading in the water, maybe like halfway up to their shins. So they shined their light around the stream when they spotted something. It looks like somebody is wading through the water. They can see this symmetrical and rhythmically consistent disturbance made by the water of like somebody is standing in the water and sloshing closer to them, except for there's nobody there. There's no body doing it. When they would turn their spotlight off, it would start, but when illuminated, it would start again. It was reacting to them, and this was the moment that their stomach would clench because they would realize that what was happening was not a fish reacting to them, it was something. It scared them pretty badly, but they decided to keep it to themselves, and they decided to go back to the fire where all of their friends were. As they were on their way back, they heard the sloshing make it to where they were on the bank. And then it just stopped, but given the speed that it was moving at, it had sped up with them as they had walked towards their friends. And when they got back to the camp, their friends had actually heard that sound, and they figured that they had either gotten in the water for some reason or that they had riled up some fish. And they just kind of played this off because they didn't want to tell their friends what had happened. But after the sound ended at the creek bank, they saw tall grass being disturbed. It was by something they couldn't see, and it was running around the perimeter of their circular cleared campsite. Now, they clarified that this could have been an animal, but it was fast. This would scare the ever-living crap out of me. Then they began to hear what sounded like a man talking to them, but it was speaking specifically in each of their ears. It was actually all happening in their left ear for some reason, and at first it just sounded like gibberish, but then it became a little bit more clear after about 15 to 20 seconds, and it started saying that they should not be there. You should not be here. You guys need to leave. And then after a little bit, it got more forceful, and it was speaking directly to each of them and saying, you need to leave. Now, this absolutely terrified them at first because they thought that there was either a group of people or a person that was coming up on their campsite that was dangerous. They were all frozen with fear, but then adrenaline hit and they started running back to their ATVs. All 4 of them saw what looked like a tall black shadow figure with a hat on leaning against their ATVs. Now, pay attention. This thing was just relaxing against their ATVs, but it straightened up as soon as they saw it. It just sort of hung there, staring at them for a few seconds, but it didn't have any feet. The bottom half of it looked kind of wavy in a way, and it stood out against the dark night behind it. The girl that was with them broke their fear freeze by screaming, and then she all of a sudden just starts running towards the tunnels where all those people had been unalived. Interestingly, when they went to start the ATV, it actually struggled to start. It turned over sluggishly as like the battery had been drained or something. Despite working fine not long before they rode it down there. The entire event happened within a course of maybe 5 to 10 minutes, within maybe an hour of the sun going down. But they actually decided to put their story out there, and they received a lot of feedback from people who had actually had scary encounters themselves in this area. Even a guy who Hugh worked with, who he actually didn't know was even in the area. He said that Hugh's uncle had hired him to trap in that area, and it was the only area that he wouldn't check traps alone at night. He said it was almost like the animals leave that place at night. No less than a month later, his uncle, who owns the property, was up on a hill raccoon hunting. hunting. It was nighttime, he was with his dog, and at some point his dog was on a rock face above him, and the dog accidentally like kicked a rock or something, and it fell off that rock face and it hit his uncle in the neck. This messed his uncle up pretty badly, and it paralyzed almost his entire body. He still had some functionality on his left side though. They never figured out how he got back to his ATV, turned it around, and drove himself out of there. This part is important. It wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 years later that his story actually made it out on the local FB groups, and his uncle just randomly texts his mother out of nowhere. Hugh describes his uncle as a salt of the earth, working, hunting, farming man, even working past his retirement as a millionaire. Just a stand-up, funny, cool dude. He's easygoing, but also no nonsense. And this is what he tells his mother. He said, "I have something to tell you, and I will probably never tell you or anybody else again, but that night that I got hit with a rock, that tall figure, that black figure with the hat on that your son saw, that man helped me get up on my ATV and drive it back home." Hugh said that until he heard that, he had always thought that this shadow man was a bad presence, was not good. But he says now thinking back on it, while the whispering in the ear telling them to leave, he does think that whatever that was also trying to protect them from maybe something scarier or evil. And he can't really think of anything much scarier than that, but he's appreciative of that dark figure. Now, what do you guys think? Does this sound like another Hat Man story to you? And this is another Hat Man story where he is good. I get a lot of stories where Hat Man is good. Does anyone have any experiences where Hat Man is not good? And what do you think happened here? What do you think was waiting in the water? Do you think that that was something dangerous and that that's what the Hat Man or whatever that was trying to get them away from? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I would love to hear them. Guys, I just want to say that yesterday, so many of you shared my content and look what it did. It worked. TT was not able to my video. Oh, I almost cried when I saw that. I was so unbelievably appreciative of you guys. You guys are seriously the best. Like, you have no idea. If you guys appreciate my work and you want to help me get out of this restriction that they put me on, go ahead and share it again, but only if you want to. I don't want to force you to do anything you don't want to, only if you like my work. My shout out tonight is going to go to Timmy Fox. Thank you so much for sharing my content, and thank you so much for being on my TikTok. That means absolutely everything to me. I love every single one of you guys, and I may do more than one name in a video so that I can get to all of you because you all freaking deserve it so much. Thank you so much, you guys, and I need you to do 2 things for me, and what are those? Stay safe and what? Have a spooky night. Love you guys. See you in the next one.